Meanwhile, the planned expenditure for the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information was under the microscope during day 2 of the meeting of the Standing Finance Committee of Parliament on Wednesday. Education Minister Senator Ruel Reid announced that the ministry's allocation is $1.24 billion, revised from $525 million. The bulk of that amount will go towards facilitating program implementation. He says a major chunk of the budget has been allocated for the building of classrooms in some 14 schools.
This is to alleviate the shift system in 6 high schools, namely Papine High, Norman Manley High, Magotty High, Old Harbor High, Albertown High, and Cedric Titus High schools. Improvements will also be done to Bellevue, Charles Smith, Mount St. Joseph, and Belair Phase 2, as well as Port Maria Primary, Campbell's Castle, Exchange, and Signey Pagan Agricultural School.
Meanwhile, the allocation for teachers' education and training has been increased by a whopping 13,000%.
From $3 to $411 million to fund some 500 scholarships for the training of teachers in math, science, and TVET in the tertiary institutions, as well as to conduct in-service training for teachers who are not qualified in the areas that they are currently teaching.
The early childhood sector has been awarded 18% of the ministry's budgetary allocation, which will be jointly shared with the Special Needs Division. Additionally, the minister notes that support for tertiary education has been increased by 20%. Some funding has also been granted to curriculum development.
In regards to curriculum changes, we have increased by 16-fold the allocation, now to $64.4 million, to implement the new standard curriculum from grades 1 to 9, which will promote student-centered teaching and learning, as well as critical thinking skills of all students. In addition, some $100 million has been allocated for the phasing in of the announced program, which is the alternate pathway to secondary education, which will provide differentiated and customized teaching to meet the learning abilities and needs of each student. Starting also in the new school year, we will be extending the period of secondary schooling by 2 additional years for those who need it. This will be implemented within the framework of the Career Advancement Program CAP, for which $850 million has been allocated. We will continue to position the CAP as the premier post-secondary TVET program of study for the 16 to 18 age cohort, as more students have been expressing interest in our offerings. Against this background, we'll be targeting over 10,000 students for the 2016-17 academic year, almost doubling the number of participants during each of the last 2 years. The NVQJ skills certification rate has moved from 37% in 2013 to 54% last year.
Meanwhile, $4.34 billion will go towards sustaining the National School Feeding Program.
The Ministry, along with the Early Child Commission, will continue to provide funding to schools to serve breakfast and lunch to some 126,000 students, or 70% of the early child cohort, and lunch only to some 202,000 PATH beneficiaries outside the early childhood age cohort. The Ministry will also continue to fund the operations of the Nutrition Products Limited as it increases its purchase of local produce to assist in the preparation of prepackaged meals for distribution to schools. The Ministry is also reviewing its tuition fee policy and expects to provide much greater equity in the system and adequate funding to meet the needs of schools at the primary and secondary levels.